From the origins of the humans until the appearance of culturally advanced societies, a series of fundamental events took place that shaped prehistory. The extent of prehistory encompasses the entire evolution of mankind until the adoption of writing. How did man go from nomadic hunter-gatherer to develop complex civilizations? Egypt, Mesopotamia, ancient China, Mesoamerica, the Andes, ancient India. How did the human being evolve to finally create these cradles of civilization? We will tell you all this and much more in less than 10 minutes. Before we delve further into this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please, push the like button so that this video can also serve many more people. In the previous episode, for which I leave a link in the description, we covered everything that happened from the origin of the universe and our world until the appearance of the first humans. In this episode, we will analyze the emergence of the first civilizations, but first, we will see how men evolved throughout prehistory until reaching the point where complex societies began to form. Prehistory encompasses practically the entire evolution of humans, from its origins to the adoption of writing. It is divided into three periods: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. The Paleolithic begins 2.5 million years ago and reaches the year 10,000 before the current era. It was a period characterized by the nomadism of man, who constantly moved in search of food. The man dedicated himself to hunting, fishing, and gathering fruits. He made stone utensils and tools that he used to hunt or break animals. In this period, the first artistic manifestations appear, located inside caves. The Mesolithic is the intermediate and transitional period between the Paleolithic and the Neolithic, and ranges from the year 10,000 to the 7,000 before our era. This period was marked by strong climate change, in which the last glacial phase came to an end. The climate became more temperate, hunting became a scarce resource, and man began to search for new sources of food. The Neolithic is the last period of prehistory, from the year 7000 to the 4000 before our era. In this period, great advances are generated in the life of man, driven by the discovery of agriculture and livestock. This led man to a sedentary lifestyle, and the first settlements appeared. But how did it all start? How did man populate the world? How, and from where, did migrations begin, which then lead to the emergence of the first settlements and later to the development of great civilizations? For this, we are going to start by analyzing what happened in the last part of the Paleolithic period.
200,000 years ago, the human being already inhabited Africa. It is the moment when the Third Ice Age occurs. Then, 100,000 years ago, the expansion of the Homo erectus began. A species that would end up occupying half the planet at the end of the Third Ice Age. All of Africa, much of Asia, and almost all of Europe. They had learned to make cabins, which protected them from bad weather, in the absence of natural caves, which until then, was their only refuge. Then, approximately 30,000 years ago, man populated America for the first time. He accessed it from Siberia, by crossing a dry Bering Strait. The sea level was lower than the current one, because of the glaciation. Thus, it did not take long for man to populate practically the whole of the Earth. But let's analyze this period in greater detail. During the period of the Third Ice Age, the first forms of two new species also emerged: Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, with a cranial capacity that was 3 times that of Homo habilis. With the appearance of these new species, the Middle Paleolithic begins. Homo erectus became extinct about 90,000 years ago. In the first departure of primitive Homo sapiens from Africa, they migrated to the near Middle East, and there was a first hybridization event, in which Homo sapiens genes were transferred in a population of Neanderthals. Then, this hybrid species migrated to the east. Although initially the differences between Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens were small, some 80,000 years ago, a clearly defined Neanderthal culture already existed. Both species, Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, spread throughout Europe, Africa, and Asia. They hunted all kinds of animals and adapted efficiently to every environment. About 35,000 years ago, Homo sapiens already manifested cultural superiority over Neanderthal man. A good proof of this superiority is that the world population went in a very short time, from just over 1 million inhabitants to almost 5 million. The oldest known remains of prefigurative art already appeared 30,000 years ago, an advance associated to a significant intellectual evolution. Man thus acquires the capacity for abstract thought. He also developed articulate language. About 25,000 years ago, Neanderthal man became extinct, making Homo sapiens the only human species on Earth, and we can now refer to him simply as man. Other than minor racial differentiations, no major physiological evolution has occurred since then. The extraordinary evolution of man has been purely cultural. During the fourth and last ice age of the Quaternary era, some 20,000 years ago, man roamed the earth gathering fruit and hunting. When a human group identified an area rich for hunting, or with edible vegetation, they established temporary camps there, until resources were exhausted. Little by little, stable camps or towns, dedicated to hunting and gathering, were emerging. This is how man became sedentary. Among the oldest settlements of this type, there are a series of settlements staggered in time in northeast Africa, in present-day Egypt, dating back 19,000 years. At that time, North Africa was a jungle rich in fauna and vegetation, but the glacial period would soon end, and a process of desertification would begin, which would originate the Sahara Desert. However, the northeast area remained fertile for a long time, thanks to the Nile River, the longest in the world. It is born in Lake Victoria, on the African equator, and carries the waters north, to the Mediterranean. Another area where there are early indications of grain harvesting, is the Palestine area. 13,000 years ago, Palestine was part of what was called the Fertile Crescent, an area of especially favorable conditions. The area between and around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers is known as Mesopotamia. Stronger and more numerous settlements were formed there, dedicated to agriculture and livestock. Meanwhile, in America, the first agricultural practices were already developed about 10,000 years ago, in the Andes Mountains, in Peru. Later, during the 7th millennium, agriculture also began to appear in some areas of Mesoamerica, in what is now Mexico. But let's go back to the Middle East. Around the 7500 before our era, wheat began to be grown in Jericho, the oldest inhabited city in the world. The pig and the goat were also domesticated there. By then, Palestine was still at the head of civilization. By the beginning of the 6th millennium, agricultural techniques had been remarkably perfected throughout Mesopotamia. They built dams and canals to store and distribute the water. Farmers were able to harvest more than they needed to consume, which led some men to choose to specialize in producing other types of goods. Thus, was formed, in what would later become the city of Ur, a community of merchants who came to travel the coasts of Arabia by sea. Religion and superstition spread rapidly among the agricultural peoples, and all kinds of rites arose. Priests specialized in ensuring that the gods were satisfied with the people. Thus, each town was creating its mythology. In Anatolia, the only cultural advance identified during the 6th millennium was the construction of fortresses, a sign that its inhabitants suffered frequent incursions from neighboring nomadic peoples. Egypt had more favorable conditions than those of Mesopotamia, so the region remained oblivious to the advances that were taking place in the other regions. Egypt thus continued during the 6th millennium, a Mesolithic tradition of gathering and hunting. Neolithic culture, on the other hand, spread from the Middle East to Europe. Around 6000, the first agricultural communities emerged in southeastern Europe, which later spread along the Mediterranean coast during that millennium. At the same time, agriculture also arises in the Indus Valley, present-day Pakistan. During the 5th millennium, Neolithic culture consolidated and spread throughout Europe, Africa, and Asia. This was a period of great prosperity, and the world population grew to 50 million inhabitants. In Europe and Central Africa, the megalithic culture appeared in this period, whose main characteristic was the construction of large stone monuments, which are believed to be associated with new rituals and beliefs. Greece began to develop navigation. They sailed through the Aegean Sea, reaching the island of Crete. Slowly, agriculture continued to spread in Asia, through the Indus Valley. Meanwhile in America, in some areas of Mexico and Peru, hunter-gatherer peoples began to lead sedentary lives, domesticate animals, and work pottery. At the same time, in China, Mesolithic settlements formed along the Yellow River, and began to cultivate rice. Nomadic cultures arise in the Baikal, and later spread through Siberia and Central Asia. Other human groups that shared the same language populated North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. But Lower Mesopotamia, the area near the mouth of the Euphrates and the Tigris, was the site of the greatest advances. It adopted the canal system that had been created in the upper part of the region, and thus managed to take advantage of all the possibilities offered by the rivers. Thus, arose an irrigation agriculture that made the area the most fertile and prosperous of the time. Mesopotamian cities gradually became city-states, each ruled by a king. The priests oversaw the administration of the cities. In the center of cities, temples were built. A bourgeoisie and an aristocracy also emerged. Later, the smelting of copper is achieved in the Sinai Peninsula. This system is quickly adopted in Mesopotamia and Egypt. It was in Iran that copper metallurgy flourished. There, ore from India was imported, manufactured, and exported to Mesopotamia, along with silver, gold, and other precious metals. In Mesopotamia, copper was used to make more effective weapons than stone, used to defend against the incursions of nomadic peoples. The city-states were fortified, which had happened long ago in Anatolia. As Egypt was surrounded by the sea, the Nile Falls, and the desert, it did not suffer invasions for a long time. Lower Mesopotamia suffered constant invasions from shepherds who came from the Zagros Mountains. Towards the year 4000, finally it could no longer resist and these invaders settled in it, which plunged it into a deep crisis. And before we close this documentary, remember that all the episodes of our Origin series are included in the playlist, for which I leave a link here above, in chronological order. We reached to the end of this episode, on the prehistory of the human species. In the first 2 chapters of our Origin series, we have analyzed everything that happened from the origin of the universe, through the appearance of life on Earth, the evolution of the human being, the emergence of the first settlements and the beginning of the development of the first civilizations. What lies ahead in our series is even more exciting. In the next chapters, we will see how the societies that began to emerge in prehistory become more complex. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and please, leave us a like. Thank you very much for getting here.